All right, it looks like we have a quorum, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Today is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023, and the time is 9:06, and I'm gonna call our Utah Lake Authority meeting to order. We'll go ahead and start out with our welcome and inspirational thought. And Cameron Alton is gonna do that for us.
Board members and those online visitors, thank you for being here today. As Mayor Fulmer asked me to think about this, it was great to reflect a little bit on what is the purpose of our board and why are we involved here today. And it made me think about a recent family trip that I had. So we were able to go to Yellowstone National Park. Sorry, we were recreating outside the state of Utah, but I guarantee we spent a lot on our way getting there. But Yellowstone was established in 1872. It preserved 2.2 million acres of land. It is home to the world's most diverse mammal population as part of the contiguous United States. So I say the world's, I should say the North American continent. And it is the world's largest concentration of active geysers with over 500 identified, which is roughly about half of the world's known geysers. So this geographic area was set aside and preserved. And really, I had to ask myself why. Back in 1872, what is it that we felt as a nation was so important about that area to specifically preserve it? And what it is opportunity. So opportunity is defined as a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. So as we think about what we are doing here with the Utah Lake Authority, we were established in 2007 as part of the commission, and then later in 2022 as the authority. The intent is to promote, inform, sustain, and protect the lake. It is the largest freshwater lake in Utah. It's home to the June sucker, an endangered species only found in the Utah Lake region. It is a robust wetland ecosystem, and it has 27 access points for recreation. So what does this all mean? Why are we here? Well, what we've really done is provide an opportunity for the future. I am grateful to be part of that opportunity, collaborative with this board, as long with the public, interested parties, cities, counties. It is something that I look forward to preserving and providing opportunity for not only my personal children, so they can enjoy Utah Lake the same way that we were able to enjoy Yellowstone, but also for any person in the state, country to come and see this beautiful part of our region. So I'm grateful to each of you for being part of that and look forward to providing opportunity for the future.
Thank you. I know that does deserve a round of applause. That's great. All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and go around to the board and see if anybody has anything to report. I'm just going to kind of move my arm.
No.
All right. Anybody online from the board have anything that you'd like to share? I didn't see any hands go up.
Okay, I'm sorry, may I have like 5 seconds?
Yes.
So our research project at Utah Lake, we have this NSF funded geosciences research project for the last 3 years. It just ended June 30th. So I was gonna we're putting like the final touches on our presentations, but I was gonna just send to the board a link where you can find all of our student projects and presentations. So keep an eye out for that in the next few weeks.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you probably got interviewed by them. Yeah, thank you for participating then.
All right, well, we will move on to our staff and committee reports, and we'll start with our executive director, Eric Ellis. He's going to keep project updates.
All right, let's just share this screen real quick. Okay, so just a few updates. We've got quite a bit to talk today about, and so we're going to do some staff reports and a couple things that I thought would be of interest to the board today. We partnered with Curtis Blair, who had to be excused today. But we partnered with them and had a really good article come out talking about the Utah Lake Authority, what our purpose is, kind of bringing people up to speed on why we exist, and that was published just a few weeks ago. That the link to that is in or on the agenda, so be sure to take a look at the news article. Wanted to talk about our tour with Congressman Owens. It was a fantastic tour. We had a number of our board members and some other specialists join us on the lake. We stopped at a couple different sites. We went to the new North Saratoga Springs Marina site. Looked at the potential nature center site. Came around the lake, met at by the Linden Marina right there in front of Vineyard Beach. Had a great discussion there and experienced an awesome rainstorm during the process. And then headed down to Utah Lake State Park, and Ranger Gibson was kind enough to take us out on the Ranger boat so that Congressman Owens could get a feel for just how enormous and magnificent Utah Lake is. Congressman Owens loved it. It was, I'm told, made a great impression on him. And he is interested in meeting with our board as subsequent to that to do a roundtable to really understand the issues facing the lake and how he in his capacity as congressman could come and help us. And so we'll look at, we would love to gather everyone and gather the group, do a roundtable here. It's scheduled for the 14th of August. And we've been doing some research on what he has as far as committee assignments so that we can align some of our potential requests with some of the work that he's doing on education and other assignments that he has. So we'll have those prepared for that meeting. So if it's not on your calendar already, August 14th, and we'll send out a calendar invite for that right away. In fact, we've already sent that out, but just take a peek on August 4th and you'll see it there and see if you can clear way for that to happen. I wanted to also mention that the state created watershed or a watershed act, I think 2 years ago now, and asked that there be watershed councils created around the state. Utah Lake Watershed is one of those. Just wanted to let you know that that has been initiated. And the Utah Lake Authority is represented on that board among 15 other interest groups. So it's quite a diverse group. And that has been started. We've got a tour planned for the lake in the fall, and then another one in the spring. And between the two tours, we'll take in pretty much the entire lake shore and stop at some of the key locations that are impacted by watershed, both water leaving and water entering the lake, as well as a treatment plant and some other locations, farms, agriculture, and that type of thing. So should be a great resource to this board as that group better understands the watershed. We can get reports back to our board and find ways that we can work to improve that. Today, we're going to talk about a few big projects. We've got Consor here to talk about progress on Wapara Way. Consor works under a contract with Forestry Fire and State Lands and has been doing the engineering and design on the project. And so we've got a cool presentation that they'll be going through with us. We also have BWP that's been working on our brand for the Utah Lake Authority. And we're ready for the board to select a logo. And so we've got, I think, 4 different logos to choose from. We've been working on with them quite a bit on narrowing it in on something that is something that, well, I think you'll all be excited about. There were some really nice looking logos. And then we'll also talk with Jacobs Engineering is here to help the board go through swing weighting, which is what we need the board to weigh in on. So this is kind of a prioritization tool that allows us to evaluate all the many projects that we could deploy on Utah Lake to improve it. And it just helps us kind of get a feel for priorities of this board so that we make sure that we take those into consideration. Also wanted to mention, because it's just about to happen. We have we put out an RFP for algae treatments on the lake. Sorted through those applications that came in, and we selected Aquatechnics as this year's entity that's going to treat Utah Lake State Park and Linden Marina. And I just pulled up the most recent harmful algal bloom warning that had been posted. And one of those is in Utah Lake State Park, so this can't come soon enough. It should take about 10 days for that contract to go into place because they need to get the right permitting from Division of Water Quality. But that should treat the rest of this summer, and then the spring of next year. Hopefully we can kind of have some continued treatment so that we're not in the same position that we are this year, where we're trying to get a contract in place after the summer has begun. This way we'll have a month of treatment leading up to it, and with our next year's funding, we can put a contract in place. Yeah.
What is their methodology of treatment?
Their methodology is a mix of a copper treatment and then also hydrogen peroxide, which is a non-toxin. So it kind of balances it out so that they can do a single algicide treatment and then maintain it without exceeding some of the chemical concentrations that are limited through their permit.
And is it mostly in the marinas or do they
Just-
go beyond?
Just in those two marinas. The state park has a bubble curtain on the inner marina, and so this will be the first year that we get a continuous treatment to really test that out. There's been some hiccups with, the length of the contract in at least last year. The curtain was up, but we were kind of running out of funding to treat in the end of the year. And so we'll see how effective those are, and that might be something that this next year we get installed elsewhere. An attempt was made to install a bubble curtain at Linden Marina, but due to low lake levels last year, boat props were hitting the lines going out across the inlet. And so if we pursue that, we could work on trenching or something like that so that those pipes had a safe place to be, even in lower lake levels. But this year it'll be getting started on that. And then there's a lot of other things that we're working on to improve water quality. This is more of a temporary solution to our main areas where people are typically swimming in the lake, and we want to keep those as free of algae as possible. Okay.
Stand so everybody can see me. This poll is very poorly designed. Well, hello, everyone. It's to see you all again. It's been a few months, so I'm just here to give you some updates on some of the conservation efforts and kind of like monitoring and restoration that we've been working on throughout the summer. So one big question for a lot of people has been carbon removal efforts on Utah Lake. As most of you probably know, and if you don't know, the Lloyd contract was ended earlier this year, so they are not doing like full-scale carbon removal with us anymore. Janstrip decided that just wasn't going to be worth the expenditures anymore. So what we're kind of going with this year so far is Janstrip purchased a 300-foot net. Originally, they had a 600-foot net they were using, so it is about half the size, but that's about all we can get a hold of this year on such short notice, I guess. And then also pulling a 600-foot net takes a lot of boat power that the state and JSERC doesn't necessarily have right now. So far kind of what we've come to is that this year is kind of like a work in progress year of trying to figure out what can we do better next year than future years to be most efficient at removing park. So with that, we're gonna just continue our ecosystem monitoring this year with Kevin Landum at USU. So he does kind of like smaller scale removals, but they're not necessarily for the purpose of removing tarp, more of just studying like what is the body condition of carp, what are the general sizes, how many are we catching for their survey plots. So that will be continued this year, and able to have kind of that continuity of data so that that will all be precise for the future. So that will continue, and we're gonna be using BWR and USU staff for this August to kind of get that going. Next year, we're hoping to have like a fuller team to scale that up, either with BWR, USU, or possibly other agencies. And kind of the idea for next year and in the future is to have more large scale removals in low water years to have kind of this max effectiveness on the lake, because if we're removing in high water years, we're not catching as much, and we're putting in just the same amount of effort, if not more, with little results. So they've done a lot of modeling at USC with some of their grad students that lower water years are definitely going to be the most efficient, most worth our time, as well as producing the best results for the lake park removal. So that is generally the idea right now. Nothing is set in stone. We're continually having meetings with JSER. We're like technical committee meetings, so kind of in the works of that, I think that's a good update on that, since that is very hot topic. And then some June sucker updates. I've been out with DWR a few times this summer. So far, as of the 12th of July, over 6,296 individuals have been basically detected on their portable and stable antennas that they have in the Provo River and the Provo River Delta project. So that's a lot. That's great news, because that is just individuals that are tagged. Not every June sucker in the lake is tagged and will be able to be detected on these. So that's great news that like they're using the Delta and we're getting a lot of results from that. It's nice to be able to see those big numbers. And then as of right now, DWR is setting these light larval traps in the Delta to be able to try to track spawning. So basically seeing if we can catch a little bit of larva to prove that, hey, June sucker is spawning, they're being successful, and all of our efforts are worth it. And so far, they are starting to catch some. As of last week, they weren't, but now it's starting to pick up a little bit, and hoping to get out with them, we'll see that in action. And then when it comes to vegetation and shoreline restoration, hopefully next year, a new monitoring opportunity has come up for Utah Lake Authority, which is very exciting. As of this year, Utah County has been seeding with the Marsh Masters. You can kind of see here that big cedar way on the back of the Marsh Master has been putting out a large upland wetland mix of seeding on all the areas that have been treated for Phragmites. So next year, we're hoping to use previous Department of Ag and Food established plots. There's 27 of them scattered around the lake. We're hoping to reuse those to be able to track how well the reseeding is doing, just to make sure that we're putting all this money and effort just to make sure that it's working. And I mean, there's been a lot of research done by USU already about reseeding, revegetation, and it's been successful. So we're hoping that this effort will provide the same results. And then with this effort for monitoring next year, it is going to take more than myself to do it. So we're hoping to hire an intern for just the Utah Lake Authority in general, with me, Eric, Sam, Jenna as well. And then for more on the ground with actual plants for revegetation next year, I've been in contact with High Mountain Nursery in Heber City, talking about what kind of plants we'd like to get started for next year that we can purchase, that we can plant around the lake. There's already been some areas that emergent vegetation is already coming back so well this year with the high water. So we're kind of hoping to kind of capitalize on that and be able to continue that regrowth next year. So that's very exciting opportunity for us. And then social media has been a fun.
We have a
Oh, yeah, sorry.
What types of plants do you? What's kind of the methodology for the plants? What types do you want? What are you?
Yeah.
what are you-
For the like planting the emergents. So we're kind of going for more of an emergent mix. So emergent plants are usually semi-aquatic. So that's not going to be something like a tree. So it's things like sedges, bulrushes, possibly like duckweeds, things like that. So you think hard stem bulrush, alkali bulrush, cattail even. So all those things are kind of in that middle zone of can be wet, can be dry. Those are some of the species we're looking at now. We know they can grow them up there. They provided us with some donated plugs this year that were planted in the Provo River Delta project, and they're doing well so far. So that's kind of what we're hoping to get a little bit better and larger start on it next year, so that we can kind of have more of a kind of bunch to spread around the lake.
Do we need to organize a service project of sorts to get those planted?
So I have been in contact with UVU, actually with some of the professors there. They have Dr. Michael Broder. But he has a really big interest in revegetation efforts, so he has a lot of students that are willing to, whether volunteer, monitor, get those out planted, so we definitely have the people to do it, and if not, we can always organize volunteer efforts to kind of get that out there as well. So have the manpower, thankfully, which is good. And then next thing, I've been working with Jenna a lot lately for our social media presence. It's been definitely something new for me, but it's been really fun. We started a segment called Ask Addie on Instagram where people can like ask any kind of environmental questions they want, and we usually do a little segment on it, just to answer general questions, whether it's about pollinators, birds, lake level, anything like that. And we've been really taking to it so far. We've had a lot of stuff to do already, which has been really fun. And Jenna's been really great to work with that. She knows way more than I do with that. So, but it's been a really fun segment, and I think a lot of people are really engaging with more like the wildlife side of like authority, which is really fun. And I like to be interacting with people. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any more in-depth questions, I'm definitely happy to answer anything like that. But yeah.
I hear rumblings. People are curious about this monstrous fish in your hand.
Okay, this is a northern type that I caught with BWR in a tramp net, about a month or two ago. Northern type love to hang out right outside of the old channel at Utah Lake State Park. It's one of the only places BWR has been able to catch them even. It was very large. It was maybe like 45 inches. It was massive. It was a little down for the count because we had it in a tub for 2 hours. So it was a little sad, but it lived. We had to implant a monitoring device in it. You surgically implant them into type for monitoring purposes like movement studies. So he got a little roughed up, but he did good, and he's living, and definitely was a big guy. So it was really to do that.
And real quick, we don't want northern pike in Utah.
No, we don't.
They're being tracked so that we can figure out their habits and maybe one day have an effective way to remove them as well. They were legally introduced 10 years ago or so.
Yeah. So one of the big parts of GWR's Northern Pike study is catching them. Usually there's a kill order actually on them. So if a random angler catches them, you're supposed to kill them on site. But for DWR, if you catch them, we are implanting these telemetry devices so that they can be tracked, like Eric said, to monitor their habits, because they are very hard to catch in Utah Lake. Surprisingly, anglers have better luck, but I think BWR had 18 tags to put out this year, and I think they only got 12 out so far. We were lucky we caught this one, and I happened to be there, which was cool for me, but they're definitely trickier to catch than we think. So it's important to do this kind of work to be able to figure out where they are. So yeah, if anyone else has any other questions.
Great. Any other questions?
All right, I will pass the baton to Jenna. Yeah. Woo.
So I must have been working on stuff, so we're trying to rebrand the website. This is a little sneak peek of the homepage, what it's gonna look like. Once we have our final branding stuff, we could get going on that with the logo, fonts, colors, everything. We're doing a staging site right now. So I essentially we're going to update the theme. And then we want to add different content pages, specifically hubs for the different activities you can do at the lake. So a specific page about fishing or hunting or bird watching. So that people can go to the site, it can be a really good educational resource that they can use to either start new activities or get more information about the activities that they already enjoy. And they can learn how to use the lake better for those things. We also want to create pages for the specific events that are happening around the lake. And just generally update and add content around the website. So that's really fun, and I'm excited about that. Once we get the branding stuff, like I said, it'll go a lot faster and we'll be able to roll it out this fall probably. We also have events like starting actually Sunset Yoga at the Lake. This has been like my passion project since I started, which is not that long ago, but so I'm teaching a yoga class at Vineyard Beach. So I've been working with Sam to put out promotional material for that and advertise that. So this first one is tonight, 3-class series. And we're really excited about that, so please spread the word. It's not too late to register. Yeah, we're doing it at Vineyard Beach, which will be really great. Has a really nice sandy area and close to the water, so I'm really excited and. And then generally, I've been working on social media and networking. Addie talked a little bit about some social media with the Ask Addie segment. I've been working on getting more consistent content out, working with like stories, reels. Trying to figure out what works best for our audience. I've been trying to connect with different like, communication managers, social media managers, like the marina managers, to try and connect our outreach efforts. I met with Russ Franklin and Zach Seifert at Utah Water. I met with Catherine Newman at Vineyard. So it's been really good to connect with a lot because we have so much, so many skills and so much reach between all our organizations and departments. So it's been great to get to know a bunch of other people that are working in the same field and try and connect those efforts so that we can really get the word out. Because if we're all communicating with our audience, then our reach is way greater and we'll be able to, maybe change perception, get more information out about events, about projects, about, any other information that's going on at the lake. So that's mostly what I've been looking at.
Great. Are there any questions, Jenna? Thanks, Jenna.
Morning. I just want to hit on a couple of events that we've had recently and some that are coming up and some of the programs we're working on to engage with the public. And the first being the Utah Lake Festival. So our last board meeting was just a few weeks before the festival. This is our first year bringing it back after a 3-year hiatus with the pandemic and a few other challenges. Attendance was low. In comparison, we had just under 1,000 people this year. The last 2 years of tracking put it at around 2,500 to 3,000 people in previous years. So we have a variety of discussion amongst our planning committee on how we can improve that. I was not surprised to see a reduced number with some of the changes and the delay getting it started again, but we're excited to continue to improve it. That being said, the event had a really good Net Promoter Score. For anybody who might not be familiar, Net Promoter Score is a way of evaluating how well your event performs and or services or product. Other businesses use it too, but for us, we ask people, how likely are you to recommend the Utah Lake Festival to a family, friend, or colleague? And they respond on a scale of 1 to 10, and then you break that down in a formula to evaluate how likely people are versus how unlikely they are. So the score can range from -100 up to 100. So a 36 is actually a really good score. There's definitely room for us to be able to improve though. So some of the feedback we received, I don't know if any of you had a chance, I think I saw Hillary there, but the cardboard boat race, if anybody saw that, was a massive success. We had 18 teams in the water and they all loved it, even though I think half of them sunk as soon as they got in the water. But they really enjoyed it. We had a ton of people on the docks that were watching it. I almost lost my voice because of it, so I think we're going to buy a megaphone next year. I talked loudly here, but apparently it was not enough in that event. But people really enjoyed it, so we're definitely planning on bringing that back. We did receive some feedback that attendees that took the survey, our feedback survey, wanted to see more adult and teenage activities. So we're going to look at introducing some new elements. We talked about possibly a volleyball or spike ball tournament to try and attract teenagers and high school kids. We talked about bringing in things like inflatables and other options. So we're looking at a variety of things, live music possibly, that we could be able to attract various crowds as well. But good feedback from our survey, 78% of the people who took the survey had never attended the festival before, which is amazing to be able to have that many people who've not been be able to come each year. And that's been pretty typical in years past as well. It's a wonderful tool to feature the state park. It's a wonderful tool to be able to educate people about the lake and help them have a good, positive experience down there, to encourage them to be return soon. Speaking of returning, one question we always ask is, because of attending the festival and your experience there that day, how likely are you to come back to the state park this summer? And 89% of respondents were either likely or very likely to return to the state park again because of their experience at this event. So we're really excited to see that. Next year, as I mentioned, we have some plans on better marketing, some new activities, and looking to increase the attendance at the festival. The Utah Lake Scavenger Hunt is coming up. So this will be in September this year. For those who haven't heard about the scavenger hunt before, basically it is a digital scavenger hunt. You use a mobile app to complete. We have around 150 different missions to do at the lake. And they center around kind of fun and education. So there's trivia questions they can complete. There are videos they can watch online, like the Utah Lake Legacy documentary, and answer questions about it. There's educational blog posts they need to read, like about the Phragmites treatment or visiting the June Sucker Recovery website. There's even one where we require them to make their own PowerPoint presentation about the lake and teach somebody about the lake. So all kinds of educational stuff. And then there's fun activities where, for instance, kind of a difficult one is visit all 27 public access points in a 24-hour period. Now, granted, it doesn't take 24 hours, but it takes at least 9 to 10 typically. So they get a lot of points into the raffle for prizes for that. There's also things like we hide caches of Utah Lake branded stickers that they can go find at different access points. And Strava art, I included, this is an image from a couple years ago. Somebody, if you aren't familiar with Strava art, it's tracking and you create images. So if you Google that phrase, you'll see crazy stuff. It's usually joggers in cities that like to do it a lot, but like a Bengal tiger or the Mona Lisa, and they do all these kinds of crazy things. So I imagine a canoe kayak might be a little bit harder to make intricate shapes. So I'm impressed that they pulled off doing that part. So that's another mission they do. So a lot of fun. They can earn raffle prizes. There's a grand prize offering of 2 inflatable paddleboards. So teams can sign up. There's information on our website, utahlake.gov, but it'll run for 10 days, September 22nd to October 1st. And it's just a great fun activity for people to learn more about the lake. And then last, I just want to hit on some of our programs that we're operating. So the Life Jacket Loaner Program, we partnered recently with the Utah Drowning Prevention Coalition and Utah County Safe Kids. Utah County Safe Kids actually applied for a grant through the greater Safe Kids program in the nation and was awarded that grant. So for the next few years, we have a few $1,000s to help enhance our Life Jacket Loaner Program in partnership with them. So right now, one of the enhancements this year is we're planning on building an additional Life Jacket Loaner station at Mill Race, which is on Provo Bay. So we'll have, I believe it's 8 stations operating on the lake. And then we're also putting a posting out on Just Serve and seeking additional volunteers. We have a couple of core volunteers, one in particular, if you've met Kim Ray, you'll remember her for her Irish brogue. She's very enthusiastic about the Life Jacket Loaner Program and helps us in a variety of ways. I, at one point, had to tell her to let us try and find some other volunteers because she wants to just do it all. She'd spend her entire day, every day at the lake if she could. She's been great to work with. The Adopt a Shoreline program is functioning well. We're currently at 40 out of 45 areas adopted. You remember from the previous slide that there's only 27 public access points, but we had so much interest that we broke up the sections of trail at the lake and some of the city parks that are adjacent to the lake to try and help add more areas, and people just keep wanting to adopt and care for them. So it's great. We're currently going to be updating some of the program agreements and procedures. It's not been edited since original drafting, I think 10 years ago. So we'll look at updating that this year. The fiscal year that just closed out, with all the volunteers that participated and filled out the reporting form, we had over 300 hours of service donated in this program. And then the third program is we are working on implementing a small grants program. This was something new in the budget this year. So it's fairly early on, still under development, but we're exploring opportunities for trying to either reinforce or introduce new recreational opportunities at the lake. So we're excited to report on that more in the future. I believe that is everything, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
Sam.
Oh,
I
please.
have a question, Sam, and maybe for everybody, but what is the most common request that you're receiving? So like you're doing the activities, you're kind of coordinating the events. Is there anything that we get a request for that we just haven't been able to do? Like funding based on, so like the festival, they say, you know what, why don't we do this in addition to, or along with? Are you getting any of those types of requests?
Yeah, so directly our agency doesn't get a ton of those. However, to that point, we actually had a team of interns 2 years ago now, I believe it was, who we actually worked with them to evaluate popular lakes all across the United States and compile data on what kinds of activities and events and programs and classes and tournaments that they offered. And then we took that information and we actually did a public survey that we sent out, just a convenience survey online. I think we had 300 something responses from county residents, and basically asked them, what kind of classes do you want to see at the lake? Do you want kayaking classes? Do you want paddleboarding classes? Do you want bird watching classes? What kind of tournaments do you want? And we broke it down into those categories and gathered that data. Something we'll be working on with this small grants program, both with the cities around the lake as well as other partners, is looking at that data on, hey, Saratoga Springs residents said that 70% of the people who live there want a paddleboard class. Then we can take that to Saratoga Springs and talk about how we can partner on starting. So I'm excited to work with the small grant program to be able to further enhance that. Funding definitely has always been a challenge. I think the other big challenge has always been algae blooms, but I think there's been some great strides in recent years on educating people on how they can safely recreate during a bloom or in areas where there are not blooms, and what types of recreation they can choose to pursue when it's on.
Just as a follow-up, maybe we can do it offline, but if you have those, I'd be interested to see what some of those requests are and where the shortcomings are. Promise to work on potential funding that we can address again or educate the legislative perspective. So if there is a high need that we feel is not being filled, let's discuss it. Let's figure out how we can fill that gap.
For sure. Thank you very much.
Also, have you been in any discussions with the Adamson?
At Explore Utah Valley.
Yes, for the Big 12 event and bringing activities down to the lake and seeing how to get them involved. They're looking for things to do all across the valley.
Sure. So I don't know about that particular event. Jen actually has a meeting, I believe, in the next couple of weeks with their director of marketing, Charlene. So we'll be establishing that. We've been in touch off and on over the last couple of years, and it was always very positive. I think it's one of those cases of schedules just didn't align and we didn't quite connect yet, but we have some steps in place already to further develop our relationship with Explore Utah Valley. One thing in particular they suggest is they'd like to do a static landing page on their website instead of just blog posts about Utah Lake, having a dedicated resource so that anybody who visits their website has good, great info, which is a great information about the lake. So we're excited to work with them as well.
I met with them and I let them know that you guys would be reaching out. I serve on one of their boards, so I think it'd be a great opportunity. Well, and then to find something to do down here, and really bring.
For sure. I'll make sure we note it down. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, that brings us to our consent items. Unless anybody would like to discuss anything, I'll just give you a motion. to approve.
Madam Chair, would you prefer those all in a single motion or individually?
Yeah, single motion is great.
And then I would move that we approve consent items 4.1, 4.3, 4.3 as outlined on the agenda.
All right, we have a first by Cameron,
I'll second that.
the second by Tom. All in favor, actually, we'll go around and we'll do a roll call because we have people on. I'll start with Mayor Kapus.
Yes.
Oh, and you have to say your name. I stated your name. But it's easier to get.
John Mackey, yes. Freddie River, yes.
Hillary Hungerford, yes.
Cameron Dalton, yes.
Julie Bowler, yes.
Tom Sackler, Utah County, yes.
Carolyn Hungerford, yes.
Oh, sorry, I just realized that this did not have the grandma policy. We made a quick update. And yesterday sent it out as just a grandma policy. We could add that in. It was sent out for yesterday. That's okay. That's okay to recommend.
Yeah.
I think we did all consider the old agenda.
So
It was sent out yesterday at 9 AM. The grandma policy itself looked like this. And showed it as 4.4. Okay. I think we just printed an old agenda. My apologies on that.
The grandma policies on the back of this agenda. I think it's just the cover. We didn't have it.
It's just the agenda that's not labeled.
Okay, as long as this was the agenda that was noticed and put out.
Yes.
4.4, then we can amend that.
That is a favorable amendment. I would add that we include 4.4 grandma policy to the consent item.
Thank you.
And that goes with my support that second, yes.
I'm gonna have us all restate our names and vote. So Mayor Lucy,
Just really quick, did we just pull this? This is just our typical grammar request. Add anything that we have.
It's, yeah, effectively, we're officially adopting what we were using as the Lake Commission and unofficially using as the Lake Authority. We're just, we were doing some reviews as we've been working through some grandma requests and discovered that we needed to have that officially adopted by this board. So
That's helpful. So, Mayor Michelle Lucy, yes.
John Mackey, yes. Freddie River, yes.
Hillary Hungerford, yes.
Cameron Dalton, yes.
Julie Bowler, yes.
Tom Sackler, yes.
Yes.
And then who do we have a line?
Mayor Mark Johnson.
Mayor Johnson, yes.
Excellent. All right, I'm gonna move on to action items. each of you were sent the third-party benchmark compensation study that was done for the executive director. This was done by True. Hopefully all of you had time to review it and look it over. I'm recommending that we go with the mid-range that was suggested by the group. I think that Eric has been doing a phenomenal job. So this is really conservative. He's transitioned the ULC to the ULA while getting all of that going. Brought on all the discussions of all of our stakeholders, carried out all the projects that were still going by the ULC while continuing new projects for the ULA, and then going and getting legislative funding. He's done all of this with great communication and exactness, and I would just say that this is a good base for reviewing this in the future and allowing us to grow into this as we really see what the ULA takes this position and creates a role more effectively than we're seeing today. Any questions?
Questions? I think just, Eric has been fantastic through all of this. That it's important that, these are considered really. I truly appreciate all of this done. It's hard work getting off the ground. It's taken that.
All right, with that, I just need a motion for this agenda item.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Second by Grady Grammer. And this is going to be done by roll call as well.
Mayor Christie, yes.
And Mackie, yes. Rudy Meyer, yes. Stern.
Hillary Hungerford, yes.
Kevin Dahlman, yes.
Julie Ballmer, yes.
Tom Cyclich, yes.
Ellen Lumberg, yes.
Mark Johnson.
Mayor Johnson, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's passed. We'll go ahead and move on to our presentations. And we'll start with 5.1, which is the Low Fairway project, and this will be presented to us by Consul.
Good. Yes. When you want me to just go through, you want me to just move? I can do that as it's the slide. The scroll thing. Okay. Let me just do a screen share. Okay, we're good.
Okay. I'm Lars Anderson with Consort Engineers. I've been here with you before. Today, we're going to present about Waukera Way to show you the progress that we've made on the trail alignment and some of the amenities that are included as part of the project. We're under contract with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands with Ben over here to do the work. And of course, the Utah Lake Authority has been a large part of this project, as well as cities, Vineyard and Orem and Provo have all been, in Utah County, have all been involved with the trail alignment and the amenities that we're going to show today. So we're showing today phase A and B. You go to the right side, it'll scroll down. Yeah. This is generally what the project area looks like. As you know, a lot of wetlands, a lot of Phragmites, a lot of Russian olive, and we're going to put a trail through it. This shows the phase. So if you go to that scroll on the side, it'll pull up a little bit.
Right.
Yes.
There we go. Okay.
So there's phase A, is the northern section. So this includes mostly the area near Vineyard. It's still not incorporated into Vineyard, but it's adjacent to, so including the Sleepy Ridge subdivision. I'll scroll it down. And this,
Oh, here.
Okay.
So if you got a pressing on the top button, please. That way people online can see.
so scroll back up, yeah. So this is called a story map, and it's kind of cool technology because it allows you to show the amenities and also zoom in on areas very dynamic. And this can be uploaded to your website so people can go in and they can zoom in or out on the map, and it'll show exactly where the trail is going. So here is Sleepy Ridge. This area is going to be the Holdaway Farms, I think is what they're calling it. Holdaway Fields. Yeah. So it's under development, and so we proposed a trailhead on the north end of that because the developer is going to be adding the access road and utilities to get there. And so we're adding on to that. Our project will include the parking lot, the barn, restrooms, those kinds of amenities, and tie into the utilities that the developers required to bring in as part of their development. Seems like it's working well. that help? This is the North Trailhead. There's 87 parking stalls. A barn area is right here for community events, and there's a restroom provided for the barn adjacent to it, so it can be open if the barn's not open. Keep on scrolling down, this shows a 3D image of that. So this is what the barn will look like. We're planning to construct this in cooperation with the city, where this Vineyard City will take over the maintenance of this and managing this facility, because they can then use it for community events. It can also be used for educational events. When they bring the fourth graders down, they'll be able to have the classes in here, and it can be open at other times based on when the city wants to use that for a town hall meeting or whatever it might be. So it's a partnership between Forestry, Fire and State Lands and the city and Utah Lake Authority on all coming together to build this facility. The interpretive signage loop leaves the barn area, the top ones. It leaves the barn area, and it's a 6-foot trail that follows adjacent to the main trail, and it's a gravel trail. And the point of that is to have interpretive signage, so it's a little bit slower pathway for people that aren't familiar with the lake to go along and learn about the lake and learn about the geology and learn about the wildlife and not get run over by the cyclists. So we created that adjacent to the paved trail as more of an educational opportunity. And you can loop around and come back to the barn. So it seems like a good fit there. We're showing the signage that we developed for a Rock Canyon project that we're also doing, just to give you an example of what the interpretive signage could look like. It hasn't been designed yet. So it's. And we'll move south now. This is what the trail, the size of the trail. It's a 14-foot wide trail, 2-foot shoulders on each side, 10 feet of asphalt. Keep on scrolling, and that's the 6-foot trail. That'll be all gravel. And then this is the access road at the southern trailhead, 24-foot access road. And that was, I can't read it. That was our trail down south. Yeah. This is a connection that we have with a boardwalk that's going over to the Sleepy Ridge subdivision. And that's essentially what the boardwalk will look like. We use the boardwalk where we have to get across some wetter areas. We try to avoid the boardwalk as much as possible because it's really expensive. It's about $150 a linear foot. So boardwalk spending, not as expensive as bridges. It's the next step down from a bridge, but it's still expensive, especially because we have to build it so that a maintenance vehicle can drive across that still. So it's 10 feet wide still. Utah County is going to maintain this portion of the trail, and they need to get across that in order to maintain the pavement and other grading, other issues. These are some examples of what it could look like if we're going to put rails on it or not, depending on the height. So that's phase A. We're going to move into phase B, which is the southern portion. It comes down into the Orm area. The trail, this portion does include a viewing tower, includes a hunting blind, and then the trailhead on about 1200 south. So here's the viewing tower in this phase, and this is what the viewing tower will look like. We went through about 6 different scenarios of what the viewing tower should be: 30 feet, 50 feet. We ended up with a 30-foot tall structure, and it is going to look like that. We like it. What do you guys
I
think?
didn't understand how to climb on it. Go back.
Oh, yes, happy to. Right.
Oh, there's the stairs around the backside of the mountain.
Yeah, so there'll be a ramp leading up to it. So the first level will still be ADA accessible, and then the upper level won't be. But you'll still be elevated on the first level. You'll only be 8 to 12 feet in the air. And then, so you still see the lake, but then you can go up as high as 30 feet from there. And then as we go further south, the trail continues, and then we break off and cut over around Powell Slough, because this lower area of Powell Slough is going to be still open for hunting. So we're not going to run a trail through it, but you can access it. And then this will be an ADA. This is the other trail section I was showing, a 6-foot trail section. Okay, scrolling down here, and that's the hunting blind. So if you keep on scrolling, it'll show an example of that. That's what the hunting blind will look like, and that's going to be built by dedicated hunters because they need the points for their program. So that's not part of our contract to design that. We're just designing the location and how it's gonna get there, and then the dedicated hunters will build it similar to that.
And can you clarify for that? Who has ownership and consequently liability for the blind itself? With accident on any of these structures, I guess.
On the other structures, this Vineyard City has agreed to take on the maintenance of the barn and the bathroom, because they're gonna also be using that, and the viewing tower. Orem City has taken on the maintenance of the trailhead that's south of Greenstone a minute. I don't know who's taken on the trailhead. It's a good question. I don't know that we've resolved. Any ideas from Ben and Eric who've been involved with this?
Well, oftentimes these blinds are pretty simple, and so what we're hoping for is that it's a ground access so that it's ADA accessible. And so the structure itself will make sure that it's being built, you know, to withstand weather and so forth, but because it's on the ground, there's the inherent risk of hunting for sake of hunting, but the structure itself should be simple enough that it shouldn't be, you know, posing the concern.
And I guess, yeah, the maintenance and construction said it done by dedicated hunters. It may just be a follow-up topic. It's just to be aware exactly where does like authority or individual cities or county liability responsibilities.
I think that the Lake Authority has taken on the responsibility of making sure that the gravel path over to it stays in good repair. But we can talk to our attorney and kind of figure out what that structure ought to look like so that it reduces as much liability as possible and figure out if there's some way to cover coverage of that. So.
And from a liability perspective, Utah does have a recreation act that essentially says if we're not charging money, then people can go out and recreate, that they assume that liability themselves. So if there's a Dick Cheney incident where somebody gets shot in the face with buckshot or something like that, that's largely on them for the assumption of liability for hunting. Okay, and then in addition, the Lake Authority does have the protections like most other state entities where they're represented by the state attorney general's office in the event of a liability. So state risk management covers, and that goes into the state risk management pool. And those would be subject to the Governmental Immunity Act caps. So that limits to buckshot or no solid rounds? What's a range that?
Well, it's usually the cap is somewhere between 750 and 850. It goes up, you know, it's congested with, you know, the cost of living and everything that way. So it has a COLA adjustment, but there's a per incident cap that they cannot exceed unless they fit into certain categories. There have to be some kind of gross negligence, something outside of the purview of the purpose for which it is done.
So if those who use it know that they're only allowed to be buckshot, for example, with a limited range, whereas
Well, I don't know that it matters whether they use buckshot or anything else. I was just assuming example.
I'm just bringing out, you know, with down range, if someone happens to be voting on the same time, so it's delicious, like actually, yes. The voter got to get as well as the duck.
Well, so I think in that scenario, the liability falls to the individual, so to the hunter, it's their responsibility to know when and where and how they're allowed to hunt. So that's not a state or public entity's liability, you know. Obviously, anyone can sue anyone for any reason at any time, not unless attorneys. But it would be dismissed out of Governmental Immunity Act or out of state. That's why I focused more on the structure itself. If there was, you know, faulty construction or something that caused a big accessibility mishap, that's where I would potentially.
In our permits that where we issue the permit for these things, I think the gross negligence is a big factor because we know there's those general indemnifications when people use public lands.
So we typically have maintenance and upkeep provisions in there, and also further indemnifications for the state. But in this instance, where this is being partially taken up by the UOA and the dedicated hunters, but again, this is probably a conversation where we will figure out who will be getting more, or who will be upkeeping this and who's taking on those responsibilities.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. John brought up a good point. If everybody, if there's not one person tasked with it, then nobody's tasked with it. And then when it starts to fall apart, everyone's just pointing fingers. So I think for that bill, we have to figure out who is responsible for it and who's in that moment.
For sure. On the viewing tower, we have our structural engineer designing that, and they're designing that with steel instead of wood, so that it can withstand any fires that might come through the area. So that will be a solid structure, but we're not in the habit of designing duct lines. That would be a bit of impression. Okay. Moving on then, the trail comes across, and we do have to cross the Powell Slough, and that will be a bridge. Keep scrolling. This is what the bridge will look like roughly. Again, that has to be a vehicular as well as pedestrian access across the Powell Slough. So that's our big bridge crossing. That one's a little bit spendy. Spending some dollars there. We're out there right now with our geotechnical engineer drilling holes. So we know how big the abutments need to be. Okay, and then this moves over to the Spring Water Park connector. This goes through Orm's maintenance yard for the golf course. This is a little bit rough through here. In the rough, so to speak. Some really steep slopes kind of falling apart. We're going to put the trail on top of that ridge. So there's a lot of work to do here to kind of secure this and clean this up. That's the view from where the trail will be. It's the wastewater treatment plant and the maintenance yard. Not ideal. We know that, but there's a bike path over on Springwater Park, and we want to tie into that because that goes directly over to the UTA stop. So from the UTA stop, you can come all the way over and get onto the trail system. So we need this linkage, whether we like it or not, or anyone likes it. I don't know that matters as much as it's the only way through here because of the wastewater treatment plant, everything else, and the golf course on the other side. So we're threading the needle here. And to do that, we have to fence on both sides, including the cantilever fence on the golf course side, trying to keep pedestrians safe. as they go.
That connects to the UTA for Rockford Station.
It does,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's magic.
That's why it matters, huh? But it's not going to be the prettiest section of trail by far.
Is on the fencing, are we able to do something where maybe on that side with the sewer plant, we could have some planned graffiti of sorts or something like that? You know, decorative art, have people come down and do something so that it's a pleasant thing instead of, you're already smelling something bad.
Yes.
But you know, on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so is there something we can do where we can, you know,
To do a concrete fence would be ideal there, but it's just expensive.
yeah,
And so we should look at our budget and see if we can fit something in like that. Because out of sight, it puts it out of mind a little bit.
There's also vegetation, trees.
yeah.
Natural bugs. So,
Yeah, I've done a lot of odor related issues and even having a minor flock can make a big difference on the odor
Yeah,
level, just the way that the wind patterns work, but you know, if it's, I mean, I don't know if we can do concrete, but even like almost like a heavier duty tarp over the fence that then be decorated or something. It's gonna do pretty well and you know, the wild or foliage or maybe bushes, things like that, it's gonna help. Yeah, fragrant.
Mayor Johnson.
Oh, yes, Mayor Johnson.
So this is an interesting subject to me. I served on the TSSD board for 15 years. So I'm not sure I see as big a negative in this as everybody else. But I think something that would be very important and probably interesting is to have some message boards or some knowledge boards explaining how sewer treatment is actually part of the ecological system here. Because it's really important to have. And, you know, I'm not sure that the odors are that bad. You're right next to a golf course. I've golfed that before, and there are times you smell it. There's sometimes you don't. But I think if the public understood how important the process is and what's going on here to the ecology of the lake, I think that's pretty important. And I'd like to see some knowledge boards up there.
Now, that's a great comment.
It's a good opportunity. for education.
Actually, speaking of TSST, so we're right adjacent to them at the Linden Marina, and I've sat in and toured, and they have some pretty extensive plans right now to have some engineered wetlands and boardwalks, very similar amenities, and that is exactly what they're doing with what they're doing on their connection to the trails, having a whole bunch of educational opportunities besides opening access. So educating the public about what they're doing and what they're seeing and the clarity and the cleaning and sort of reclamation of the water and everything. So
That's great.
they have some,
They've already done it.
yeah,
Like,
they're already getting a lot of it cleared with the Army Corps and getting the engineering plans.
Good. Okay, just about to the finish.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so this is the Orm Trailhead, right at the end of phase B, the south trailhead. We call it 65 stalls, the restroom pavilion, no barn like at the other location. This one is just more functional. Again, the fourth graders can come in here, but it's a little bit easier on the north area because there's a place for them to hang out inside the barn and listen to the presentation. This is going to be constructed by the project and maintained by Orm City. We did meet with them last week on site, and they gave us the big thumbs up from all the city council members that they are on board with this. They are asking to maintain the landscape and areas around that, but have the county maintain the asphalt and the parking lot itself. So we're working through the agreement on that. We'll see where that lands. Just starting those discussions. This is phase A and B. I have a couple blow-ups of what the barn would look like. If you keep on going a little bit south. So that's a closer view of the viewing tower concept and what it would look like at different times of day. And then this is the barn. Lots of doors on the sides, lots of openings, keeping it open and airy, and more of a shade structure, just a large shade structure. But you can also host, wedding receptions and other events like that in here that the city will manage. That's all I have.
Any questions?
I know we talked about signage, but what do we have planned? Are there any benches, rest stops along the trail? So we talked about kind of the major points, but will there also be benches or items along the trail or stop?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. That's probably our next step. Right now, we've got the alignment and starting on the engineering for the bridges. I think we need to get into that next level. I agree with you. And then we'll have to talk with the city and who wants to maintain those. The trash cans is always such a controversial subject because you want trash cans out there because you want people to put their trash in there, but then maintenance guys that have to come clean them up, they're not particularly fond of them. So it's always challenging.
I don't know how much, where things are at with this, so this question may be a bad one, but have we gotten to a place where the Holdaway family is feeling a little better on things, or is there still a good amount of conflict on that? I don't know if you're the right person or if other people are.
Did you get the email from Joe Perry?
I did.
So I would review that kind of opened the door, and Ben, you want to maybe talk a little more, but the door has been opened for an amenable solution.
Yeah, basically, Joel had asked that we try to find a solution that, removes the threat of litigation and leaves everybody walking away. In a positive light, and so we met with the BOR and came to the BOR might be able to donate that land to the Department of Natural Resources. So there would be state control of that parcel. And I think that we haven't spoken to all of the families, but the Holdaway family seems to be in more support of that because I think there's going to be more collaboration towards those goals of conservation. And I think that's ultimately what they were after is, conserving this area and having public access. And so there's still a lot to be done, and we need to meet with these families and also confirm with the DOR is going to be able to work through their process, but ultimately, I do think this puts us in a better position where we can probably do some things that the federal government was not able to do and, you know, get this land conserved and get the public access to the.
One of the, I mean, the Holdaway family has generations of investment into this area and. You know, and to the extent that we can continue, I know there was a portion that was called the Holdaway or whatever, but. To the extent that we can show some of that. Kind of give a tip of the hat to. Their legacy in the area, I think it would be helpful. And I think that it's something that, you know. They've been fighting a lot of fights and I think they're pretty battle worn, but it would be nice if they could come out of this in an ideal world. Feeling like their legacy had been honored, that they were supportive of it. I don't want to, it's just, there's a lot of emotions on it and, you know. So that's kind of the.
I do think that this brings this into a really good spot where they will feel welcome back to the table and I think that was one of their main concerns is that they've not been as involved in the conversation as they'd like. So I think it's time to invite them back to the table and then also they're likely the folks who are going to be raising this and when raising is offered. So I think it's absolutely reasonable to make sure that they're involved with, you know, all of the future steps and then working with them to make sure that they're concerned and giving them that legacy because there's a lot of emotion and investment in that property.
Like on the walkway where it's the educational walkway, talking a little bit about some of the early settlers, which include the Holdways and, you know, what they did, what they went through, things like that would be a pretty easy way to, you know, honor that legacy, things like that.
Well, and you can work with both our city and Lehigh's Veterans Museum. And they have so many resources from the Holdaway family and the settlers of that area that are working on that right now. I know both BYU and UVU are both doing videos of the families and the early settlers in that area. So there's so many opportunities for that legacy to continue.
The Timbernoes tribe as well.
Absolutely.
Very fair. But Hutchins has a good relationship to build into that history. So
We'll reach out to them.
It was settled.
Okay. Next time, hopefully, we'll show you some actual signage that we're going to use them.
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Okay, that brings us to the ULA branding presentation.
They are online. Brett Palmer.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning, Brett.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so quick introduction. I'm Brett, BWP. I also have Abigail, who's our lead creative on the logo design and development, just in case we need her. Adrian, unfortunately, who was responsible for developing the brand architecture, was not able to join us, but I'm going to walk you through that today a little bit. And then we'll, after that, we'll go ahead and move on to the logo concepts. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen. Let me know if everyone can see brand architecture and messaging.
It's up.
Okay, great. And real quickly off the subject, the AC in our building went out 2 days ago. It's a nice toasty 87 degrees in here today, but I have an AC repairman on his way. If I have to just sneak out for 30 seconds and just go get him going, my apologies, okay? Okay, everyone ready?
Yes.
Okay, so real quick, I'm guessing that everyone is probably familiar with what foundational brand architecture is, but just in case you don't, there are two elements to a brand, to a new brand, and one is the foundational side or foundational components of a brand, and the other is the visual component of the brand. And what we're going through here is the brand architecture, the foundational brand architecture. And what that does is essentially forms a foundation of who we are, who we want to be, how we want to present ourselves, how we want to think about ourselves, what we want to focus on. This kind of becomes our the document that we will refer to for messaging, for marketing, to make sure that we're all cohesive on who we are and what we stand for, so that everything moving forward is consistent and cohesive. Okay. So real quick, the recap for this presentation is we'll review the project purpose. We'll go through a quick brand discovery recap. Then we'll introduce you to the brand platform and the personas. And eventually the messaging narrative. So project purpose. Let's see, how do I get rid of all of these? Okay, there we go. Help people fall in love with Utah Lake by reimagining it as a year-round recreation destination just waiting to be discovered. And these are the three phases that we are going through, but we'll guide you through. So real quick, we conducted a team meeting with Eric and Sam on the 12th of April. And then we reviewed public-facing communication channels, read through the management plan, conducted preliminary research on general trends in outdoor recreation in Utah, just to kind of get a good established foundation for what we were developing here. Takeaways: outdoor recreation in Utah is on the rise. The recreation sector increased by 27% between 2020 and 2021, provided 2.7% of the state's total GDP. And then in 2022, the legislature created the Utah Division of Outdoor Recreation to help meet the demand for outdoor recreation opportunities. These numbers confirm what we've seen on the ground. People are flocking to the outdoors like never before. Just gives you a little context. So the takeaways: Utah Lake is an incredible natural resource right in our backyard. It's home to thriving ecosystems, world-class recreational opportunities, and vibrant communities. It hosted 219,108 visitors in 2022. Has a rich history of recreation, and though it holds a special place in the hearts of some Utahns, it struggles to attract the attention of its heyday. As an underutilized and misunderstood site, Utah Lake has some significant hurdles to overcome, including perception around safety, ecology, economy, and growth. Takeaways for the current brand: Utah Lake is seen as the redheaded stepchild of lakes. It has become an inadvertent poster child for HBA algae blooms. There's a major lack of awareness as a recreation site and limited awareness of its rich history and importance to ecosystems and communities. There's public interest in the future of the lake in a variety of areas, some of which we've talked about today. Safety appears to be #1 hurdle to visitation, algae blooms most often referenced. Appearance of the lake is also a hurdle. As a shallow lake, it looks muddy from sediment. We do have a great jumping off point with our 12.6 thousand followers on Instagram. And then you're all aware of the current ULA mission statement that leads a cooperative effort to identify, fund, and implement projects and programs to enhance the lake's ecosystems, recreational opportunities, and thriving communities. So this is the brand platform that we have built for ULA, and it covers the purpose, the position, the promise, the brand pillars, and the brand personality. And we're going to go through those now. The purpose of the lake, of ULA, this is what we've identified. We love the lake, genuinely care for its health, its inhabitants, its communities, its visitors, and its futures. The position. Utah Lake is a natural wonder with endless ways to explore. It is a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. The promise, which is the key value you deliver to your customers. Utah Lake has an incredible number of adventures in store to both entertain and inspire you. When you find the lake, you find yourself. There are a number of pillars that we developed to the brand platform. Number one, exploration. We are intrepid adventurers who delight in the beauty and energy of the natural world. Fun. We are joyful enthusiasts who are always seeking fulfilling new experiences with family and friends. Optimism, very important for us in this brand. We are glass half fullers, constant look on the bright siders who choose to focus on possibility and progress. Responsibility, also very critical for us. We are trustworthy stewards who support and enhance thriving ecosystems and vibrant communities. Growth, also important. We are facilitators of sustainable growth. You can count on us to help foster systems of economic resilience and expansion. We thought this was really a key component as well, connection. We are communicators who encourage a renewed connection with the lake and the land, with others, and with oneself. So then we went in and tried to define the personality of the ULA. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with these archetypes, but there are a number of archetypes that are defined. I just want to explain a couple of things here to you. These are Jungian archetypes that show up in everything from the Bible to Star Wars to superheroes to all brands. These are what a number of large brands use to help understand who they are and what their personality is. So this became important to us to help define the ULA moving forward. And the initial personality definitely became the explorer, with the core value of being freedom. And the motivation being spiritual journey. And by spiritual journey, we're not necessarily meaning this a religious journey, but rather a spiritual relationship with nature and the lake. Optimistic peace comes back into play, what things can become, not what they might be perceived as today. This is very forward thinking. So our primary personality is the explorer. In the explorer, we have some examples here just to kind of give you some context. They seek to create new pathways. They seek to connect with themselves, their surroundings, and with others. They're curious, bold, imaginative, and reflective. They are energized by possibility. Some explorer brands to consider. And I won't go into all of the various examples of how these brands are explorer brands, but I just wanted to give you a little context. And then we gave the ULA and the lake a secondary personality, and that's the jester. And oftentimes you think of the jester as the court jester or the clown, but it's definitely not that. It's not about being a clown, but rather, or not someone you laugh at, it's someone you laugh with. The core value of a jester is pleasure, connecting with others. Seeks connection with others, seeks to entertain, inspire, and enlighten. Clever, optimistic, fun-loving, playful, and self-aware. Energized by fun. Some jester brands, just to give you some context. And one area we were referencing for this type of brand is the National Park Service. And we wanted to show you kind of what we were thinking. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with their brand or with their messaging, with their social media outreach, but this is kind of where they've gone. So if you can everyone see these examples, these social media examples? It's okay if you fall apart sometimes. S'mores fall apart, but we still love them. Most squirrel bites originate at the front or bite end of the squirrel. If you come across a bear, never push a slower friend down, even if you feel the friendship has run its course. To avoid crowds, visit areas that are less crowded. You know it's cold outside when you go outside and it's cold. This kind of humor is a real, we thought there was some real potential for the ULA moving forward with how they reach out to their myriad of customer audiences, where they take the lake very seriously, but they don't take themselves seriously. And it gives them an opportunity to infuse humor into what they're trying to do. So in summary, for the primary personality is the explorer, the trailblazer, adventurous, optimistic, energetic, capable, and imaginative. Secondary personality is emotional, optimistic, playful, clever, curious, and prioritizes fun. Explorer and jester. We take the lake seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. Like National Parks and Parks Project, there's a definite cool factor opportunity for the ULA. This has all the markings of a self-identifier brand that helps people define themselves. I'm outdoorsy, I'm adventurous, I'm a lake person. Now we're going to go into the personality and the attributes of the ULA. Adventurous, energetic, inspirational, playful, wise, and cool, conscientious. We're going to define those really quickly for you. Adventurous, highly motivated explorers who want to take it all in. We believe Utah Lake is the untapped treasure trove ripe for exploration. There's a manifest destiny kind of thing here. Come claim your piece of Utah Lake, make it yours. Energetic. Possesses an energetic zeal and can-do attitude that makes them always down for anything. Their energy is contagious and their speech is lively and inspiring. Playful. Fun is what it's all about. We take the lake seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. We can talk openly and cleverly about hurdles. We play with language to persuade and entertain. We tap into the beauty and possibility of the natural world. We motivate others to find beauty and find themselves. Wise. We're trusted experts and are happy to share our knowledge and with everyone else. We're generous with our experience and are positive but never patronizing. And cool conscientiousness. We are invested about connection to our shared planet and the lake specifically. We make caring cool and don't use guilt to motivate, but instead use possibility to inspire. So in summary, for the brand platform, the brand purpose is love the lake, generally care for its health, its inhabitants, its communities, its visitors, and its future. The position of the brand, a natural wonder with endless ways to explore, a hidden gem waiting to be discovered. The brand promise. Utah Lake has dozens of adventures in store to both entertain and inspire you. When you find the lake, you find yourself. The pillars are exploration, fun, optimism, responsibility, growth, and connection. The personality is the explorer and the jester. These are the goals that were established: world-class recreation, encourage use and recreation, thriving ecosystem, vibrant communities, and improve water quality in ecosystems. So Eric, I don't know what our timeline is. We still have quite a bit to cover. I can certainly continue. We've developed a 60-second pitch and a 10-second pitch, and we've also developed some messaging concepts. But tell me what your feeling is on how anxious you're feeling like you are to get to the logo process.
Yeah, we're probably a little short on time. What we're planning to do is send this presentation out to the board so they can kind of review some of those messaging pieces that you still have yet to cover. Maybe we jump to the logos and get their feedback, as we've got one other presentation after, and we got to wrap up by 11. So.
Okay, great, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to present 4 logo concepts, and we've been working with Eric and Sam over the last couple of months to narrow these down. We're presenting them initially in black and white. We've been exploring a lot of color palettes, but oftentimes color can pull you into a logo, which may or may not allow you to evaluate that logo objectively without that color palette pulling you in. So first, we're going to present these concepts without color. If Eric, if you feel like we want to, explore some, show them these certain logos in color, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just present in black and white and get everybody's thoughts.
Perfect.
Okay, can everyone see this?
Logos are not showing up on the screen, Brett.
Oh, I need to share a different screen, don't I? Okay. 1 second.
Dramatic pause.
Okay, that work?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I have Abigail, who's the lead creative on these logos, and a lot of thinking has gone into them over the last couple of months, so it's going to be hard to capture that entire process with you in such a short amount of time. But you can see that we've tried to capture all of the varieties of activities that the lake represents in a very illustrative style. So this would be option 1, and we have 2 versions of option 1. And imagine color takes these to a whole other level, but it's really nice to evaluate these just in black and white initially. So there's version 2 of the same logo, where we have the typeface encapsulated in the mark rather than on top of the mark. Okay, next concept. And again, you'll notice this does not have what we might call a container. And then option 3. Does anyone have any questions about these logos? Anything we'd like to discuss or enlighten you about?
Curious, do you have an image where you can see all three of them next to each other?
That's a great question. I don't. Abigail, is there a way to combine those? I guess there isn't, is there?
I don't know if there's a way to combine them on,
Establish.
well, actually, I can make it really fast, and then you can put it up.
Would that be helpful? Abigail can create one real quick for us. We have time.
The attendees just made their own really fast.
Oh,
So we have it in the chat if you want me to pull that up.
yeah, looks like somebody made it.
Oh,
Now,
perfect.
here on my phone, it pulls it up.
Great.
It'll show up on the desktop.
If we're looking for a short tangent, I have one, it's a question.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've discussed is that the original lake was called Timpanogos Lake. And from a branding perspective, it would probably need to be an alternative name as opposed to changing the name. Because of certain federal regulations and cost of changing maps, things like that. But if it were called the Timpanogos Lake, would that be a net positive from a branding perspective or a net negative? That's kind of a rebrand of sorts.
We did that with our golf course, right? Because the golf course was originally the Timpanogos Golf Club. And when it's, that is our opportunity to see. Timpanogos Golf Club.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious, I mean, I think it would work if you're changing the letters on all of that. You know, where it says Utah Lake, Timpanogos, then where it says authority, it's a small print Lake Authority. But I'm curious what the marketing thoughts would be on that kind of a rebrand.
So is the question, would it become Timpanogos Authority and the lake, the word lake would disappear?
It could be, it would probably be the Timpanogos Lake Authority, but we would be changing the name of the lake so that it can also be called Timpanogos Lake as a rebrand.
Okay. Okay, that's a great question. I'll share my thoughts. We've been through many of those kind of rebrands in the past, and the biggest question to consider is how much brand equity does the existing brand have? And I think everyone on this call would agree that Utah Lake has an enormous amount of brand equity, decades of brand equity. So
Question is the equity positive or negative?
yeah, that's a good question. They're both. I think it's a mix. It's certainly possible to make that shift. It would require a fairly robust marketing effort to make that shift. And it would take, you know, depending on how robust that marketing effort would be, it would be 12 to 18 to 24 months to start seeing Utah Lake disappear and being replaced with Timpanogos Lake. But I see the thinking behind it because it's a chance to refresh and start new. The brand architecture certainly would lend itself beautifully to Timpanogos Lake, other than, you know, we may have to rethink a little bit of, I don't know how much of the past or the challenges we still want to keep in the approach. If we rebrand to Timpanogos Lake, how much of the past and the algae blooms and the challenges do we still want to need to address, right? Those are still probably going to be an issue. But we'd have to talk about how we address those if we rebrand, if we rename.
Well, thanks for indulging for just a minute. There's
Sure.
something. for the future, but not today.
Interesting thought.
And the size of the image for everybody who's on our meeting here, so they can see it larger of the three together, please.
Yes, can you see, are you looking at my screen?
Yes,
Is that better?
yes, that helps. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm wondering if the board would appreciate, Abigail, maybe you can go through a really quick side by side of the three and maybe just tell us your insight into the design. You know, what are we trying to call out? What are the pros that you see? What are some of the potential cons that you see with each? Just for us to consider. And then maybe a broader question to the board. My understanding is we are not voting to approve one of these today. We're simply getting design concept and providing feedback.
Yes.
Is that? Oh, accurate?
Or are you wanting our guidance?
We could take your guidance and move on one,
Okay,
unless you would like more time to look at the 3 or 4 and vote on them electronically over the next, let's say, a week from now or something like that.
Yeah, if it helps to see color, let us know, Eric. It's up to you.
Want to just pull?
Abigail, do you want to share your thoughts real quick?
Yes, sure. Would you like us to pull up something in color at all?
I think that'd be great, especially if you want guidance. I think explain them, pull up the color, and then we can decide whether or not we want to move forward today.
Okay. So there were, I guess, 3 main elements that we were trying to cover in the logo. One being water activity, one being land activity, and then one just being an appreciation for the natural beauty of the lake and its surroundings. So we went through several iterations of different types of recreational activities and things, and we came up with utilizing a sailboat over a power boat. We had some options containing paddle sports, but those logos didn't make it to the final 3. So you'll see some repeating themes throughout these, and that's how we came to those. This first one is just a sort of serene representation of the lake, and calling out, the fish. Is we were told that fishing and angling is really popular at the lake, and so wanted to kind of make that the prominent mark in the front, and then kind of moving back with sailing and cycling. They said that was really popular, was bike riding around the lake. So I brought that in. The line work and the illustration work here is a bit of a nod to just kind of a little bit of like a Native American stylization, just a very, very kind of small nod to that kind of more tribal spirited stylistic approach. So that was this one. And the next one, so, oh, there we go. So this one is actually initially created as more of a seal or a badge, which you saw kind of a little flash. It didn't make the cut, but it initially lived inside a circle. Here we have, again, this is just more of a simplistic approach, a little bit more modern, real simple line art. The sailboat, the water. Here we added the reeds rising up out of the lake, giving a nod to just the agriculture and and plant life that grows around the lake. And then moving on to the third one.
Going back, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna ask why we do it. The prior seal, this one, so very center above the sailboat. Tell me what that- That's a fish. Okay, just to make sure.
Yeah, so this one you'll see, oh, sorry, Brett. Brett, will you hop back for a sec? Sorry, so this is just kind of the mountains create the fish tail in the center. And then the boat is aligned with those items.
Thank you.
And then this last one, which was the third option that was selected. This one combines similar elements to all of them. So it contains the plant life, the sailboat, the bicycle, and I added a bird. And we were told that birding is very popular at the lake as well. And this one sort of encompassed more of those items. And this one has sort of a modern approach to kind of an old throwback logo from national parks and things like that. But it's very, I find it to be kind of striking with the bold lines and simplistic approach to color. And so we presented a bunch of different ideas, and those were the three that were narrowed down to present today.
Great.
Does that help?
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. I think with time constraints, we probably will want to send this out to the board, let the board review it, and then we can send our comments back to you. I think this is a good first step in discussion, and I think we'll have some really good feedback for you after seeing this. And I think seeing it in color and black and white and having your explanation is going to be helpful for us as we send that feedback. Any last comments for wrapping up this work that you guys have been doing? Any comments from the board as we move to the next presentation? Anything else that you want to add to it?
No, we'll send this out and figure out a way on digitally to have everybody vote on it.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And
Thank you, everybody. We'll hop off. We have an 11 o'clock. Nice to meet everybody, and Eric will be in touch.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
we'll go ahead and welcome up Jacobs Engineering, and they're going to give us a short presentation on the ULA management plan. And they're going to be sending us something for us, an activity for us to do via email as well, that we all need to contribute to help move that project along. So, Attorney, come over.
Great, thanks all. I'm Dave Epstein, Jacobs, met with your previous meetings. We were hoping to go through an exercise with you all during the meeting today. Due to time constraints, we're going to kind of shift and kind of just give you a presentation about swim weighting related to this multiple objective decision analysis that we're doing related to prioritizing. They're going to tee this up at the beginning of the meeting. So we have a few slides to get through, or I'm here with our assistant project manager, Kayla Worthen, and then Dan Titzler, who's decision science practice lead for our team. So yeah, we're gonna kind of run through this. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the materials we had sent out, instructions document for how to go through the swim weighting and then the actual spreadsheet itself. So we will kind of walk through that spreadsheet and the process, and then as follow-up, we will ask you to go through that exercise. And yeah, and then as you get into it, we can ask later on about, potential for going through an averaging of the individual weighting you get from the board members.
Yep, sounds good.
So I think, yeah, in general, we want to tell you a little bit about what this MODA or multiple objective decision analysis is, how it works, and why this is a great approach for us and for the authority to have to be able to kind of consider options for projects or, opportunities to address needs of the lake or how to allocate funding and such. So it's really ends up being a tool for you all to really thoughtfully go through prioritizing different opportunities.
Yeah, and maybe I could pick up Dave and talk a little bit about this procedure. This multi-objective decision analysis is used to prioritize capital projects in many different types of industries. We've used this with, city utilities, state DOTs, transit agencies, water utilities. So it's a pretty common method for prioritizing capital projects. And, up above, get the process for prioritization, responsibilities scheduled, figured out. And there's a series of steps you go through. Define a set of criteria, what's important to your agency for prioritizing projects. And then we have to figure out, well, how are we going to measure how well each project meets those different criteria? By that, we'd be using some measurement scales. Develop a list of projects. So what are the projects that you're going to look to prioritize? Then we weight the criteria on their relative importance. And that's kind of the purpose of this exercise. We'll talk a little more about that in a minute. Then you score all the projects against the criteria. You calculate the overall value, which is sort of a weighted average of weights and scores. So you get a single measure of value for each project. You compare that to the cost of the project, a couple different ways we can do that. And then when you're done, your output of a prioritization is a ranked list of projects. And I also say that's kind of the easy part. You get your ranked list. Now you got to figure out, well, exactly how are we going to schedule these things and develop an implementation plan? Many times there's certain funding sources that apply to some projects, but not others. There may be regional equity you have to consider, a whole host of other factors. So you then go into what we call the harmonization or optimization process. But the basic MODA, multi-objective decision analysis prioritization, gets you a ranked list of projects. Any questions about the basic approach? Again, we're here to talk about that weighting step, but a couple other things Kayla's going to talk about, what projects are we going to be prioritizing?
Good afternoon, board members. In case it wasn't clear, we're with Jacobs Engineering and we're contracted with the Mutual Lake Authority to develop a Mutual Lake management plan. We are considering a suite of recommendations and projects that we envision running through this prioritization process. As part of our suite of recommendations, we have capital or construction projects. Those are the types of projects that would receive a prioritization score to be compared with each other. Some of our other recommendations fall across a different spectrum of collaboration with partner agencies or core program development. Those are the types of recommendations that will not be run through the project prioritization score, and yet they will be developed into an implementation plan scheduled along with capital construction projects. Other types of recommendations will include research and questions for study. Those could potentially be run through the project prioritization score at the discretion of the Utah Lake Authority. And in our management plan, we have some text describing how the project prioritization criteria can be adopted to use for research questions. So additionally, there's this note on the bottom of that previous slide, Dan, that talks about a pre-screening checklist. So there's kind of minimum criteria that the project needs to meet before it can be run through prioritization. And that includes, does it meet minimum regulatory requirements, public health and safety, and in alignment with the Utah Lake Authority's mission as an organization. And if the project doesn't meet any of those, it doesn't receive the next step of prioritization. So these evaluation criteria that are here before you have been discussed and workshopped with our planning team. That's kind of our steering committee for the Utah Lake Management Plan. It's comprised mostly of board members, and then some technical staff from other agencies are also on that planning team. you'll see if you're familiar with the vision theme for the plan, that there's alignment with the 3 vision themes for the plan, which are thriving ecosystems, world-class recreational opportunities, and vibrant communities. So we chose and kind of wordsmith some of these criteria to be in alignment with the vision theme for the Utah Lake Management Plan. And the functional requirements really are that measuring how effective this project is going to be, and to what degree do we have a sense that it's going to last, meet, do the job it's expected to do, is alignment with other jurisdictional partner objectives, et cetera. So again, these criteria we've been working on with the planning team. These are the criteria that we're recommending to be used for the management plan. And we would like to today kind of get your input on how these various criteria should be weighted. And Dan's going to walk us through that, but it's really just in reflection that various stakeholders that have different values are going to rank different things differently. Some people think ecology is more important. Some people think communities are the top priority. So the weighting is really just a way to incorporate that variability and subjectivity based on board members' value systems, their representatives and constituents.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. I recognize we just have a few minutes left. Do we have a hard stop at the top of the hour? Do we have a couple extra minutes? I have about 3 minutes to 10 now. I want to be sure I have if we have only 3 minutes, I'll give you 3 minutes. If I got a little more time, I'll take a little more time.
Try to do 3 minutes.
Okay, here we go. I'll go fast. All right, very quickly, if you were going to buy a car, each part of this, what's more important, the color or the price? Well, it might depend on what your options are. For example, if these are your color options and your price is varying by $100, maybe you would say color is more important than price in this context. So we use this concept called swing weighting to try to reflect both the variability of a criterion over the whole list of projects and its inherent importance. So I'm going to run through real quickly a buy a car example and show you how we do this swing weighting, and we'll have a set of instructions in a form that we'll send out for our criteria. But the way you do this is you take a look at all of the sub criteria underneath each of the main criteria. So let's look at cost. You got 2 sub criteria: purchase price, cost per mile. Let's make the worst alternative possible. So you've got an expensive car on purchase price and cost per mile. Which of those 2 sub criteria would you switch from the worst outcome to the best if you could only switch one of the 2? And for me, if it were, or actually, let's look at the features. Same thing. You look at all the features, it's, not very stylish. It's no fun to drive, no comfort, no cargo capacity. Which would you switch? I thought for me, maybe having a midlife crisis, I like fun to drive. That's the most important to me. I give that 100. The next one was interior comfort, maybe 20% less as I go from a not too comfortable to very comfortable, give that an 80. Exterior styling is close to that one, maybe a little less, maybe give that a 70. And cargo capacity, that's less than half as important, getting the maximum cargo capacity. So I give that a 40. So you do the same thing with cost. And then you do the main criteria. So the main criteria, you have to recognize that some only have no sub criteria, like criteria 1 and 3. The others have 2 or 4. So you look at all those as you go from the worst outcome to the best, and you set up your weights there as well. And then it's a very simple weighted averaging process to get the weights in percent. So you look at the weights in percent, and that gives you a general sense that those percentage weights aren't working for you. Then you can go back and look at the change your individual weights. So we're going to send out a weighting form to you all that'll look something like this. We have the worst outcome and an excellent outcome for each of those. And we have the sub criteria weights and the main criteria weights. And we'll ask you to fill in your weights. And if you put some numbers in here, like let's go to the example. Here's an example where we just threw in some numbers in descending order, and it shows you those weights in percent over on the side as well. So we'll ask you to fill out a form that has these criteria, the worst outcome and an excellent outcome. Think about going from the worst to an excellent, give us your weights. And then we propose for the first round of prioritization, just using the board's average weights. We do have the ability to do sensitivities. So if you're really concerned that some people have very different opinions, we could test the sensitivity if the board would like to see a sensitivity analysis. So with that, I think I'm 1 minute over. Is there any quick questions before we have to break for the day?
I think Eric brought up a really good point. He said that we could run this through the committee that's doing the management plan. We'll send it back to staff, have them weight it, and then we'll send it back to the board to see if you guys have anything that you want to add to it, or if you see anything that needs to be adjusted. Does that work for everybody? Okay. No, thank you. This was really thorough, and I think you've got a good plan moving forward. So, appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Yeah. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move into our public comments. Are there any public comments today? Come up to front right here again, maybe by the TV. State your name.
Hi, I'm Christina Davis, and I represent Conserve Utah Valley. I'm an adjunct professor at UVU in the Department of Biology. And for the last 4 years, I've been the chair of the Slate Canyon Saturdays for Earth Day. And because I work with UVU and we put a lot of energy into trying to help people think about Utah Lake, there's a question if our energy in the valley for Earth Day, instead of being held at Slate Canyon, if with the revegetation effort, Addie, if you would have plans ready for Earth Day, which this year for 2024 is April 22nd. So I just am here to volunteer energy and time and collaborating effort if you are interested for the local Provo Earth Day project. So you can contact me, Christina Davis. My contact is on the sign-up sheet.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much.
And Christina, I attended the Slate Canyon project last time.
Thank you, Mayor. You're amazing.
I jogged over on the shoreline, so I'm just like, I'm loving all of this. I might not jog down to the lake, but I.
Hey, my name is Sean Thorne. I'm the creator of the Windy Lookout app. I just wanted to introduce myself to the Utah Lake Authority. I've worked with different groups in the past. I'm excited and hopeful that we can look to partner in ways to expand the services to offer it freely to all users of the lake. And anyway, I just wanted to make a quick introduction, and I guess I would assume most people know what the app does. If you don't, it's just a wind detection and alert system for those the users out on the lake, specifically designed for Utah Lake to help prevent any situations that can occur, especially with the variable conditions that we experience out on Utah Lake. So, any questions?
Thank you so much.
Name of the app?
Windy Lookout is the app. You can find it on the App Store. And
It's advertised on all of our life jacket loaner stations. There's a QR code where they can download the app.
And you guys were asking before, like, is there anything we do that you weren't able to do before the Utah Lake Commission, whatever this would be one of those projects I would suggest is help, look to, if there's ways we can partner to offer the service freely to everyone, or look to ways to expand the services and getting more data.
Thank you.
It looks like with a hand raised online, if we can jump to that real quick, that'd be okay.
Sure.
Richard Fogel, I see your hand raised. Do you want to make a public comment? You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to do so.
Sorry. Thanks, Sam. And I thought you were going to unmute me. So I actually have two comments if I can't fit them in the 2 minutes, but I will try. The first is on reporting of HABs. I wonder if the ULA can influence the way HAB reporting is done. For example, can we report when the HAB is over? Right now, my sense is an HAB is reported and then, if you will, never unreported. So the general perception is that these are summer-long HABs when I don't believe they are. So for example, a report issued when the HAB is over might be helpful to the perception of the lake's safety. Second related point would be to report the percentage of the lake that is affected. Right now, the HAB may give a general location, for example, Vineyard or Linden Marina. However, I think the perception more broadly is the entire lake is under an HAB. So my suggestion would be, for example, when Linden Marina has an HAB, this represents less than 0.1% of the surface area of Utah Lake. To give a little perspective, would be suggestions that perhaps the ULA can use their considerable influence in how the HAB reporting process is done for residents. Sorry, do I have time for a second comment, or should I raise my hand again?
Make your second comment. Thank you.
Thank you. This has to go with the very nice presentation that is a BWP made, and I just have some suggestions or thought, and I'd be happy to share them with them in more detail if they'd like. By way of background, I have an MBA in marketing. I have run marketing organizations for over 15 years, and I was head of operations for Ralph Lauren advertising agency. So I have some experience. I would suggest a couple of things to think for BWP to think about. The first is in their brand pillars. I noted exploration, fun, optimism, stewards, growth. I wonder if there's another pillar that links the lake to the national and global ecosystem. And I'm thinking flyways and watersheds and the like. So that might be an additional facet on the jewel of the lake pillars, if you will. The other second thing might be to pick up on the Jester archetype. Utah Lake, established 25,000 BC. Or, you know, Utah Lake, first visitor, T-Rex, to pick up on that Jester archetype. Perhaps third would be perhaps more importantly, the BWP presentation today, and it may not be reflective of the work, but today's presentation meandered between a ULA brand and a Utah Lake brand. And I really encourage BWP to keep them separate or not confuse the two. A very simple example would be the ULA may have a seal or logo, but it may be different than the Utah Lake brand. In other words, to the general public, the face of the brand should be the lake, not the government administrator. A little bit like the brand of the Grand Canyon versus the brand of the Park Service that runs it. And finally, I think Eric's thought of rebranding deserves a lot of thought. While BWP may think there's a lot of brand equity in Utah Lake, I think some of us also know there's confusion between the state, the county, and the lake, all of the same name. And I would contend a average person, not visitor, but person, has more negative brand equity on Utah Lake than they have positive brand equity. So thanks very much. I apologize for the very quick comments, but thought you might like to take them into consideration and forward them on to BWP. Thank you all for everything you do.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Herbid. I am president of Liquid LLC. The last 3 years, I've been able to get interacting with local businesses and my own personal recreational pursuits, but I only wanted to mention that interaction with businesses and how they come on and work with the ULA Lake. We talked about a lot of the PR that you deal with, the negative PR, the black eyes of Utah Lake. One of those that I found with a lot of business owners is great, more bureaucrats making decisions for how we operate at the lake. I've been fortunate enough to meet most of you. I don't get that perception. I think that most everyone here is open to bringing business to the lake. I would approve that. I actually got a text from the president. This is good for you, Sam. They offered a Malibu 2023 Malibu free day for your scavenger hunt. So they'll offer that for the day. So I thought that was kind of cool that they offered that. But that kind of interaction where the ULA has this open door policy to businesses is needed. And I think knowing you, that feel is there. So I might suggest, I work with Curtis Blair, who's awesome. He's great with bringing business and that perception to the lake right now. So along with that, perhaps something separate from these ULA meetings, letting businesses come in and do like a brainstorm, come and talk about how they can bring their businesses. I know a dozen businesses right now that have that negative perception, to bring them and say, we want to work with you guys. We want you to come and perform business on the lake. And we would offer to do a special event. That's what I've done for the last 10 years, special events, concerts, keynote addresses. And I've met with some of the cities about doing special events. So we would actually provide that maybe as a backdrop for those businesses to come and kind of get the feel for the lake's open. There's changes, there's a ULA, things of that nature. So thanks for the time.
Thank you. All right. Is that chat an old chat?
Yeah, they were all.
Okay.
Double check.
With that, I just need a motion to adjourn, and then once we've adjourned, I will hand you these little tags for leaving the parking lot. So,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you, Carolyn. Second? Second, all in favor? All right, we are now adjourned officially. Thank you all for coming.